welcome to everyone. And at this time, we'd like to introduce the candidates who've made the effort to travel here tonight and welcome them to take a seat at the stage. From Fairview Park, Ohio, please welcome Mike Gibbons. From Xenia, Ohio, please welcome Michael Leipold. From Westerville, Ohio, please welcome Nani Patel. From Dublin, Ohio, please welcome Mark Pukita. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being willing to be here with us tonight. The format for tonight is a simple question and answer one between us as moderators and you as the candidates, with the simple goal of getting to know you better. We will ask a question and then go to each of you individually for your response. We've allotted 2 minutes for that response. As you give your answer, we'll try to let you know when you have about 30 seconds left in that 2 minutes. And if we ask a follow-up question, you'll have 30 seconds to respond to that. But before we get to our first question, we'd like you to take a minute and just introduce yourselves to us. We're thankful you're here in Paulding County. Mr. Pukita, you're on the audience's left. Why don't we start with you?
Hi there. I'm Mark Pukita. I want to be your next U.S. Senator, and I will unroll this other cuff here in a minute. I'm running because I live the American dream. And I had sold my business at the end of 2019. At the same time, my daughter had my first grandchild. And I looked in that child's eyes, and I just didn't think that he would have the same opportunity to build the American dream, live the American dream that I did. So at that same time, I saw Rob Portman on TV. And I thought, he hasn't done a single thing we want him to do as Ohioans, that we sent him to Ohio to do. So that's why I decided to run. I used to say I had 3 reasons, now I've got 4, and my daughter's had another child. I've never run for office, I'm not a lawyer, I did not go to an Ivy League school. I'm a strict constitutionalist, I'm a small government, conservative citizen candidate. And I'm hoping that tonight you'll get to learn about me and what I stand for, and I will earn your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Patel.
Thank you very much. My name is Nani Patel. I'm from Westerville, Ohio, Delaware County. Actually, I came to our country here in 1979, the $20 in my pocket, and worked with it, my American dream. I moved to Ohio in 1985 as a small business. We bought a Dunkin' Donuts business. From Dunkin' Donuts, then we got to the hotel business in 93. Actually, I employed more than 1,000 employees so far, and I'm living like the American dream. And I love to represent our state of Ohio in our country here. And if I can get the support from everyone, we love to do the best from everyone. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Mike Leipold. I'm a 22-year veteran of the United States Army, and I currently fly EMS helicopters in Ohio, over in Eaton, Ohio, Trumbull County. The main reason why I'm running for office is partly because the young lady over here that sang the Star Spangled Banner gave me some tush bumps. I still have a love for this country that most people will never understand. And I feel that the current political entities that are in Washington, D.C. are not serving the American people in the capacity that the American people deserve. So my agenda, my issues are solely based on what I believe my fellow citizens deserve, and that's a better America, not the status quo that we got. Thank you.
Mr. Gibbons.
Hi, I'm Mike Gibbons. I'm also running for the U.S. Senate. I'm a businessman, and I don't particularly like career politicians. And I'm running for a number of reasons. One of them is my son. I don't have enough time to explain it, but he's now a Navy pilot, and we didn't have to have military as part of our culture. Kind of shamed me into exploring this. I don't like it when people say bad things about my country. And I can tell you, I like it less when I have Republicans listening to those same people and not fighting back. And I want to do just that. I grew up at the top of a double in Cleveland, Ohio. When we made it big, we moved to a working class suburb called Parma, Ohio. Went to school there. My dad was a high school teacher and a wrestling coach. Our family was about sports. I was a pretty good student. Went off to college, learned I was a conservative. Actually learned it at Kenyon College, which I think is a bastion of liberalism. Turns out it wasn't. I believe America is the greatest country in the history of the world. And I believe that our rights come from God Almighty, not from government. I want to be a U.S. Senator. I'm going to keep sending the career politicians home. I'm going to make sure we have somebody out there defending the greatest country in the history of the world.
All right, first question, we'll go left to right, starting with Mark. As a public, it is frustrating to see the will of the American people overturned or controlled by court ruling or executive order. If elected, how will you participate in using the checks and balances available to the Congress so that the will of the people is not subverted?
That's a great question. In terms of the Supreme Court, I am absolutely against doing anything to change the court right now. No court packing. And I'll do whatever it takes, even if it requires filibustering and reading from the Bible for 24 hours to keep that from happening. When it comes to the executive branch, we have a problem with the deep state, because they take laws that are passed by Congress and signed into law, and they change them. They change them through rules and regulations. So what I think we need is a much radically smaller federal government. One of the first pieces of legislation that I tabled the first day on the leaders' table would be to defund the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. They're duplicative. We've got them in every state. We do not need them. The deep state is fed by two things: money that Congress allocates to them, and something called the APA, the Administrative Procedure Act. How many people here know about the APA? You should learn about it. It's the way that the executive branch takes power away from Congress. Are you aware that there are courts in every department, just about every department of agency? 30 seconds. Where the judge is appointed, goes through no scrutiny by the Senate. There's no due process. There's no ability to ask for a jury of your peers. And there's no right to a speedy trial. These are courts that grind people down. Tax court, labor courts.
Time, sir.
We need to fix it by radically retooling the APA.
Neil?
Thank you, sir. It's about the on-court system of our nation. If you're talking about the court system, and actually that means, I don't want to change anything on that, but we want to make sure everything goes on the right, on the track, whatever the community of our nation they are looking for the public. And that's why actually we got the court system actually set up. And my slogan for this is faith, freedom, and services. The faith is that we have to have faith in the Constitution and God, and freedom by the people, for the people, to the people, and service to the community. That is our slogan for my Senate campaign. Right now, I don't want to say anything more right now about the court system. Thank you very much.
Could you repeat the question just one more time? please?
Sure. As the public, it is frustrating to see the will of the American people overturned or controlled by court ruling or executive order. If elected, how will you participate in using the checks and balances available to the Congress so that the will of the people will not be subverted?
I think one of the biggest problems we have with Congress and the members in the Senate and the House of Representatives is big money lobbyists. I think that the influence of lobbyists has more influence on elected officials and their constituents. And I think that we need to, as elected officials, start paying attention to that a little bit more. As a senator, we have an obligation to the people of our states. We don't have an obligation to big corporations. We don't have a big obligation to big money. We need to do away with it. And I would love to be able to initiate investigations into public officials and how much money they get from lobbyists, because I think it's just terrible. And that's where I would go with it.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, the only way, sitting in the Senate, you can do anything about the executive branch, the judicial branch, is pass legislation. And unless we have a majority in the Senate, we can't get much done. But I'll tell you this, if we send the wrong person to the Senate, that individual representing Ohio will not be respected, will not be able to gain any influence over what that legislation is going to be. I believe that my history, and I didn't describe before, but the business I started 30 years ago is an investment banking firm. I started with a desk and a phone, and it's now grown to be one of the largest middle market firms in America. We've done transactions all over the world, and I will tell you that my job was to convince CEOs and CFOs all over the world to trust me individually along with my partners to do the most important transactions they'd ever do. I think it's great practice for what goes on in the Senate. But a month ago, I was honored to find out that Rand Paul has endorsed my campaign. A couple weeks ago, he showed up at my house and we had a fundraiser. And what he said was, we want Mike standing beside me the next time the Senate opens in 22. He said, you've got to help. And the reason I'm saying that is, I think Rand Paul has been the one guy who's stood up exactly against the things that you're talking about right now. I think that Rand Paul, getting to know me over the last few years, recognizes that I would stand beside him and I would defend our rights as citizens instead of giving the executive and the judicial branch authority over this. We can take the Senate back, we can take the country back.
Mr. Patel, will begin with you for the next question. As our nation recovers from the government response to COVID-19, the economic success accomplished by President Trump and his America First agenda has been frittered away. American citizens are finding it easier to stay home than to seek employment. What is your plan to get Americans back to work?
My plan to get American works, right now they're giving the free money. Every business looking for the employee. And even my business, actually I'm looking for an employee because they give the free money to everywhere, like $300 employment top from the government of our nation. And those things exactly we have to stop. I think most probably I just today talked to Congressman Wooders and I think they are stopping that now. I think, and then we can get actually regular people on the business, start a job everywhere, and that is the best way to get a job done right now in our nation. Slowly but surely, I think we will pick it up. Right now, actually, our country's economy, hopefully, we don't go to like a recession or like maybe inflation, because we got almost $6 trillion dumped into our nation, that printed money. And that is actually, I'm afraid of it right now. I think most probably, I think we will pick up the jobs slowly but surely. Thank you.
Mr. Leipold.
I think that the biggest issue that we have on the line of the economy and getting people back to work again has to be the stimulus issues that have been given. The stimulus is needed. I don't think the second stimulus is needed, and now they're talking about a third. All we're doing is we're actually propagating the idea that more handouts are coming. Don't worry about going back to work, more handouts are coming. States like Florida that actually mandated you will go and prove that you are looking for employment or you're not getting employment is a way to increase motivation to get out of the house. I think we have done a disservice to the American worker by giving entitlements that don't need to be given right now. Get rid of the entitlements, give that to who needs it, but if you're able to work and there's jobs out there, go to work. And we need to do away with the stimulus that they're going.
Mr. Gibbons.
The stimulus payments and the additional payments to people that are now unemployed because they want to be is part of the Democrat strategy. If you saw the new Green Deal when it first came out, they were going to give everybody a monthly stipend, whether they worked or they chose not to work. Part of the left's whole philosophy is if you don't want to work, you don't have to, but we got to take care of it. This has overwhelmed our administration. It's in office right now. We allowed this guy to get elected. We got to take him out. We allowed the House to go into Democrat hands. We got to take it out. The Senate is a tie. We got to take 4 or 5 seats the next election. But the only way we're going to do this, certainly we can all, I think a number of states now, 23 states I believe, have now eliminated any extra unemployment checks. But the idea that people are responsible for themselves is what America was founded on. And we have one entire party saying no more. In fact, the Smithsonian Institute just came out with a paper on white values, and they included hard work in there as a white value. We're living in some very unusual times, and we better fight back.
Mr. Pukita.
I've got a 7-point plan that if you pick up one of the handouts from my table back there, you'll see that the last one is to shrink government and the dependency on entitlements. We've got a mentality on entitlements that's approaching socialism. If we shrink the government, get back to a constitutional base with the federal government only dealing with those issues that are enumerated to them in the Constitution, protect the country, foreign relations and foreign trade, interstate commerce, and I'll give you a national currency, even though that's a stretch. That's it. We send everything back to the states or the local governments, and we allow them to deal with these issues. What that does is gets 176,000 pages of rules and regulations off the backs of our businesses, our small businesses. The Democrats want to kill our small businesses so they control 5 or 6 large major corporations. We have got to get small businesses humming again by getting the government off their back. I started a business in my basement with $1,000 back in 1996. Grew to $100 million in revenue with about 800 employees when I sold it. I employed thousands over the years. I know how government can kill businesses. The other thing we need to do is bring manufacturing back. President Trump knew that that was possible. He proved it and scared the living daylights out of the Democrats. What does that do? It brings us high-paying blue-collar jobs that people can be proud of, not flipping burgers. flipping switches on multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. That also brings back
Nice, sir.
supply chain and tech schools.
All right, the next question, we'll start with, I lose that? There we go. We'll start with Mr. Leipold. Children are a gift from God. We want the best for our children, including the best education available. That's a big enough issue by itself, but we are seeing a huge effort to indoctrinate our children with far-left propaganda such as critical race theory. What do you see as the most pressing education issue for Americans, and what, if anything, should Congress do about it?
I think Congress should stay out. I don't think the Department of Education is worth anything at all. It needs to be at the state and local levels. The only thing that the federal government actually has to offer on education principles is Title I, Title II. And by Constitution, that's all that they're allowed to. But what we have been seeing is we've been seeing the Democrats-oriented agendas towards dangling the carrot in front of state and local school system. If you do this, we'll give you this kind of money. We need to get away from the federal government and state school system. It doesn't work. The indoctrination process is a Marxist and socialist ideology. Critical race theory is part of that ideology, and our kids are under attack. When we send our kid, when I went to school, my mom and dad knew that I was going to learn what 1 + 1 was. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down. How to read, how to write. History of the United States. Now, if you're a white child, you're a racist. Now, if you're a black child or a minority, you're a victim. This is all Marxist group mentality. We need to get the federal government completely out of education altogether. And what would I do? I would get out of the way. I would get out of the way of the state, local, in your local city.
Percent, sir.
That's what we need to do.
Mr. Gibbons.
And I think, as Mike said, the federal government should have no involvement in our educational system. But our state government should. And we just had 3 years of a Republican governor that had an opportunity to do a lot of things that didn't do them very well. I'm not running for governor, but I can tell you that the 8 people that Governor DeWine appointed to the Ohio School Board voted to make the 1619 project and critical race theory a resource for our schools in Ohio. How's that happen? That's the danger here if you don't send somebody that is a real conservative, calls himself a Republican, but he's not conservative. I think it's been said already, but we need to give the classrooms back to teachers. One of the things that's very apparent to me, I went to a grade school where one principal had 1,800 kids, just one principal. Now, and my entire family are pretty much teachers other than me. My sister's a teacher, my brother-in-law's a teacher, my daughter's a teacher, my father was a teacher, my mother worked at a school, my nephew's a teacher. That's all I hear about. They have no idea what I do. We just talk about classrooms. So I get this. They want to stop the school board from telling them how to teach. They want to go back in the classroom and do what they were taught to do. That's not happening.
30 seconds.
Right now, City of Cleveland, I don't know what it's like here in Paulding County, 55% of the cost of educating kids is administrative costs. They have 8 principals in the same size school where I had one principal controlling the entire school. Now that principal whacked me a few times because I deserved it. But she was able to handle all those people, and now pretty much nobody works at all. And we gotta fix it.
Mr. Pukita.
I'm glad I'm not at your table at Thanksgiving, Mike.
And by the way, they're all Republicans.
Well, that's good. That's good. So I've already talked about defunding the Department of Education. As everybody else has said, it's worthless. It could be white, it could just fall into a black hole tomorrow and no one would notice the difference. Your kids would still come home from school complaining about too much homework or their teachers, right? Nothing would change, okay? So that needs to change. I'm going to differ a little bit in that I do not believe we need a state board of education. I believe the local school districts can do this on their own because that's really what they used to do. The school boards need to be taken back. We need to be taking back the country from the bottom up, from the top down, and from the sides in. I want to go as part of that sides in and top down. We need to take our school boards back. If you go to my website, mark4ohio.com, you can see it back there on my sign, but you put a slash after it and put education. There is a cookie cutter recipe for running for school board. You need to run for school board. If you're not going to run, recruit people who will. We need to do this because they control what goes on in the schools. Even though superintendents like to believe they do, it's the school board.
30 seconds.
The second thing that's on that page is something called a contract with the district. It basically says, I want you as a school board member or a candidate to sign that you will not do or you will do these things, like critical race theory, like the early sexualization of children. You need to go there and get that and take it to these people and force them to take a stand. There's two versions. One, all 10, I take it. Another one where they can check the box. So you know exactly where they stand on these issues.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Okay, on the school system, we, as a federal government, we should not be involved. The state government is right now, they are working on the school system, but actually I agree with the Mike, because we want to get the school system, the local school board, and people can get actually elected to school board, and that is the best way to get the school education system done right. Because right now, this is in Paulding County here, and we have Paulding County, state actually mandate this is going to be happen, and that's where the curriculum works on that. But I think Paulding County needs something different. That's why if we have a Paulding County school board and they decide themselves, I'd like to work on that. I'm not in state government running for, I'm running for US Senate, but that's the talking as a school system should be work on the local system. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gibbons, I think we're to you. Start with you. As a member of Congress, you will have the power of the purse. The purse gets its money from us, the taxpayers, and the purse just keeps paying out. Please address government spending. What philosophy on government spending will you take with you to the Senate? And maybe more importantly, where would you make cuts?
Could take all night. I studied economics in undergrad, studied it in graduate school, taught economics at both the undergrad and graduate level. I have no idea what's going on right now. We are in uncharted territory. We are spending money we don't have, and unlike, and I mentioned I'm an investment banker, I grew up in the capital markets. I was there when bond issues were sold by the US government. I sold those bonds. Back when we used to run a deficit 30 years ago, we would have to go out to the market and find somebody to buy bonds to fund that deficit. We don't do that anymore. And if they didn't want the bonds, you had to raise the rates till they would buy them. Now, we just have the Fed buy the bonds. They're creating money out of thin air. There's too many dollars chasing too few goods. At some point, we're going to have an inflation, and it's going to be really bad. We're completely out of control in almost every area of government. I think, I mentioned Rand Paul before. When you walk in Rand Paul's office, there's a clock there, and it's ticking off our national debt. No other senator has that. That's his focus. That's what we've talked about for the last 3 years. And I can tell you, there aren't many bills that I'm not going to have an opinion about, even when we take over the Senate, about cutting the spending back.
30 seconds.
We're selling our children's future down the road. We got to stop it. At some point, there's this new theory called modern monetary theory, where you can just spend endlessly. It doesn't work. I will be a senator sitting there with pretty strong knowledge of everything that's going on the capital markets side. I'm going to make sure they understand what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Mr. Pukita.
Thank you. Just as a point of what Mike said, the May inflation rate was 5%. Not annualized 5%, 5%. Multiply that by 12, that's 60% a year. That's hyperinflation, folks. It's already here. The way we get the deficit and the debt down is by cutting the federal government by 50 to 75%. We get back to the Constitution, we do that. We pay down the debt, we have no deficits, we can then cut taxes. Some of this work is going to go back to the states and the local governments, so you should expect tax raises there, but we should have a minimal tax at the federal level to pay for those three things that I talked about, and I guess printing money, takes a little money as well. But, so we can do this, and we can get rid of our deficit, we can get rid of our debt in a decade or so. It can be done. The other thing that I think that most Ohioans don't realize is, do you realize how much revenue we send to the federal government in taxes from Ohio every year? It's between $140 billion and $145 billion a year. Do you know how much we get back? It's hard to track, but it's about $40 billion a year. Why does that money even go to the federal government? I'll tell you why. They control us with that money.
30 seconds.
That money comes back to us with strings, big, fat, expensive strings. Part of that $40 million, let's say, is $10 million for Medicaid. But to get that $10 billion, we've got to commit to spend another $10 billion. The federal government is controlling much more of what goes on in Ohio than Ohioans realize. It's got to stop.
Thank you. Mr. Patel.
Right now, exactly, we are almost $18 trillion in debt or more. And whatever we work on the Senate, right now is a Democratic government. They are spending more money, maybe right now maybe $22 trillion debt. Right now we are going on that. And if we want to balance the budget to the $22 trillion, it's going to take longer time to get that done. The one Congress cannot get done. We need more than 60% senator to be elected on the conservative side. And right now we are sending actually money from our state to the federal government. And whatever we are sending, the Marxists, we are not getting the back. We have to work on immigration issues. An immigration issue is, see, right now we have almost 11 million illegal immigrants in our country. It's not, they don't call immigrants, illegal people in our country. If we give them the plan, the 7-year plan with the immigration, give them the residents of our nation and collect the money from them, like $7,000 each year, they can start paying the taxes from today up to 7 years. After 7 years, they can get the residency of our nation. Million people, $7,000 per year, $49,000. With a million, like 10 million people, we can get a lot more money, and we can actually bring our money actually because the
30 seconds.
we just call exactly we can get more money to our deficit to less deficit, and that is the right now only way we can get the balance the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Leipold.
Yeah, I believe that, first off, we have to have a balanced budget, a yearly balanced budget. We can't be spending more than we intake at the federal level. Besides that, that's just one of the little things there. The out-of-control spending that we have at the federal level is just ridiculous. We pump $15 million to train cashiers in Mexico. Why? We pump $98 million to Jordan for tourist initiatives. And then in Vietnam, we pump out $11 million for green energy initiatives. Why are we doing it? The money needs to stay in the United States, first off. It needs to go back to the people who pay into it. And until we get the out-of-control spending done, we're going to continue to see an increase in the deficit. And the deficit is sitting right back there on my kids' heads. And it really ticks me off. Politicians need to be held accountable, and there's no accountability in Washington. It's all about how am I going to get more money out of the people who I consider my constituents for my pet projects. That needs to go away.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back to you, Mr. Pukita. If elected, you will have a great impact on foreign relations. No one wants to see our jobs and money disappear overseas, nor do we want to see our enemies obtain nuclear weapons. What do you see as the greatest foreign threat to our country, and how do you propose to act in response?
The greatest foreign threat to our country are the politicians in Washington who have been co-opted by the Chinese. China is our biggest enemy. And all of us here are helping them prosper every day because we gave manufacturing away. The way we need to fight them is to bring manufacturing back. We need to do that, which will bring back that's the whole supply chain, as well as all of those high-paying blue-collar jobs that I talked about. The other thing that we need to do is we need to hold them accountable. We need to get the rest of the world, and if we need to put economic sanctions on some of those people that we consider allies for doing trade with China, we need to do it. We need to get a group together that puts pressure on China. It is not a level playing field. It is not, they are just, it's environmental malfeasance, it's child labor, it's civil rights abuses, it's religious persecution abuses. They are an awful, evil communist country. We need to say it like Donald Trump did. We need to take them on, and we need to tell them the way it's going to be. We're Americans. We can do whatever we want. We're the greatest country on earth, and nothing has ever stopped us. Think of what we've lived through, and we still prosper. A Revolutionary War, Indian Wars, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and we still hung together. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, we can go on and on and on. We need to stand up and be Americans again, put America first and Ohio first in everything we do.
Thank you. Last year we got the pandemic, and President Trump called China virus, and I call actually China virus today too. With the China virus, actually, we got lost, I can say, more than trillions of dollars in our nation. And we should actually prosecute the China and get the money for whatever we lost. Because right now we owe them lots of money to them. I think almost $1.5 billion or more. We should actually write it off, and a lot of other countries should altogether we should prosecute the China. That is, if we can do that, I think, and I don't think so this government can do that, but 22, if we got a House and Senate, if we got a majority, maybe most probably conservative government can do that. But this government won't do that, anything like that. See, if you stop buying, all people supporting China, we are buying all the Chinese product. In my business, last year, the China virus started, I told them I don't want nothing made in China. I stopped buying everything from the China. We should buy all American made, or maybe another countries supporting us. Those are the important thing. We should stop buying the Chinese product. Period. Thank you very much.
Mr. Leipold.
Yeah, Mark, you hit it right on the head. Right on the head. Politicians that are in bed with China is one of the biggest, if not the most dangerous enemy to the United States right now. Take a look at just the recent, for example, Afghanistan. The United States is pulling out, right? Who's moving in? China. What do they want? They want the natural resources in Afghanistan. And we're opening up the door and letting them do it. Who's letting them do it? current administration you have right now. The politicians that are in bed with China are doing nothing but making us weaker. They're making us weaker on a global scale, and they're making us weaker at home. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this one, but what Mark said, that's it. It's China. We got to do away with it. Bring American manufacturing back here. You can't be doing stuff like canceling the Keystone Pipeline and then sitting there pushing it over and allowing Russia to do whatever they want to do in China and everybody else. It's ridiculous. I don't understand how politicians can sit in Washington right now and act like they're doing something good when they're not. It's failing America. It's failing America's strength, and it's weakening us.
Mr. Gibbons.
On the 4th of July, National Public Radio had a tradition of reading the Declaration of Independence. This year, they apologized for 5 minutes before they read it because they said this is a country built on lies and hypocrisy and is evil and has to be destroyed, taken down to the ground and rebuilt. I think the greatest enemies to our country are in Washington right now and in the other large major cities and our corporations, in some of our state houses. They're leftists. And we've never seen, I went through the 60s, I saw this rejection of American values. Luckily I was smart enough to figure it out, and it cost the Democrats a huge amount. It cost them 20 years at the White House. I think they're doing it again, they're overreaching. But right now the most dangerous people we have are the people that want to pack the Supreme Court, bring in Washington, D.C. as a new state, kill the filibuster, because they can take over. And what they view as the ideal world is very similar in China. Very similar in China. Monitoring of everybody has the right, have to subscribe to the same ideology. So it's a little frightening, it's meant to be. We've got to beat these people. We've got to cancel the cancel culture. 30 seconds. I can tell you, I don't know if they have Coke machines in here, but the only way we're going to be able to ever fight back is start doing what the left is doing to some degree. Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, and Nike, don't buy their products. And, well, that's the problem. Every time I turn around, my wife's ordering something from Amazon. Diane, shame on you. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. We need to fight back. We've got to fight back with our feet. China is the big danger. I can tell you this. A lot of politicians talking about jobs coming back and manufacturing coming back. I was the lead banker on the Lordstown Motors deal.
I got to call you, sir.
I'm done? Okay, thanks.
You guys need any water or anything? Is we okay?
I could have still been talking.
Mr. Patel, I think we're going to start with you now. Our county motto here in Paulding County is no compromise. That motto came to be in 1887 when a group of Paulding County men dynamited a government reservoir that had become a breeding ground for disease-carrying mosquitoes. So the idea of draining the swamp in D.C. resonates with us here. And from the results of both the 2016 and 2020 elections, it's clear that President Trump's ideology of draining the swamp resonates with the American people. So if elected, how can we know that you will not become part of that swamp?
I want to be part of the swamp anyway, because Paulding County, exactly, this is my fourth visit today in Paulding County. I came in twice in one county fair, Damaris and Derby, and Paulding County, somehow I just fell in love with the Paulding County. Okay, and I wouldn't do anything like to hurt Paulding County or any other county of the state of Ohio. That is my promise to you and everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Leipold.
The way that I don't become part of the swamp is for pushing term limits. Term limits is something that is needed and a necessary task that needs to be sent to Washington. You got people that have been there for 40 plus years, and one of them is in the White House right now, doesn't have the ability to form complete sentences, but that's what you get. You get people that have no ability to relate to the common people anymore. I believe that a 2-term for the Senate and a maximum of 4 terms as a House of Representatives. I won't become part of the swamp because I would not be there longer than 2 terms.
Mr. Gibbons.
I'm going to go one better than that. I never dreamed I'd be running for office at this stage of my life. I've been incredibly blessed. I've lived the American dream. But for my son and the fact I had to spend 40 minutes with Sherrod Brown in a meeting with a bunch of CEOs, and I heard 40 years of delusion, which is really what motivated me to get in this. But I believe our founders intended us to go to Washington for 1 term, to take what we've learned in the private sector, take the successes that we've shown we can achieve, take the ideas that we formed and go to Washington and serve the people and then come home. I have no interest in being a lobbyist. I'm not going there to make any money, I assure you. I don't care about making friends. I got plenty of friends in Ohio. And I am going there for one thing, because I love this country and I want my kids to have the same opportunities that I had. I want your kids to have those same opportunities. The minute I show anything other than the kind of actions that you would see as fitting with what I just told you, I'd love to hear from you. Because I can tell you it's not going to happen. I will never vote anything other than as a constitutional conservative. No compromise is probably a pretty good idea of what my philosophy is, because you can't compromise with Marxism, and that's what we have fighting us right now. So I can tell you, I'm going there. If I don't want to get reelected, most of these politicians are worried about, can I raise the money? Will they support me the next time around? That's not going to happen with me. Now, my campaign goes ballistic every time I say this, just so you know. But I'm going to say it anyhow. I'm going for 1 term. I'm going to kick some butt.
Thank you. Mr. Pukita.
Mike, you're not the only one that gets blistered for that when I say it. So I've already said, I'm trying to prove that I want to go to serve, not prosper. I've already said I'm not taking the salary, give that to charity. I'm not going to give it back to the government like Trump did. We're going to give it to charity, and you folks are going to pick it. One requirement, it has to be a charity that takes no government money, because our charities have been corrupted by federal money. All of them, almost all of them, at the federal level, the big ones. Number 2, I've also said that book deals, speaking fees, and things like that, I will also give to charity for the rest of my life, because people are concerned that you'll go there for 6 years and then you go write a book and you get your money. The second thing is, I've had this thing called the Pukita Plan. You can go check it out. It's been out there since I registered to run with the FEC in October of 2019. I'm the only candidate that decided to primary Rob Portman. I would have had an easier job if he stayed in, because I would have had an enemy like what Joe Blystone does with Mike DeWine. Now I've got competitors, right? But the 5 points are term limits, line item veto or single issue legislation, hyper financial transparency, as I like to say, if you're not ready to take a financial proctology exam to go to Washington, you shouldn't run. Public only lobbying. If their ideas are so great, like they always say, they should be willing to have us see it. Because we get behind them if they're great ideas, right? And then we need to outlaw offshore accounts. That $100 million for Pakistani transgender studies, That $100 million goes to Pakistan, and the minute it gets there, 10 to 20 to 30% of it gets wired back into offshore accounts for the people who put those line items in the legislation. Washington is dirty. 75 to 80% of the people there need to go. My litmus test?
Time, sir.
30.
Finish your thought.
My litmus test is anybody who didn't vote to object to the certification of the Arizona and Pennsylvania results need to be primary. That's most of our Republican representatives.
Including John Gibbons.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the next one starts with Neil, I think, right? Still? Or let's Leipold, Mr. Leipold. Okay. Lost my place in the rotation here. All right, next question. Building the wall was a pillar of President Trump's campaign. He identified an issue that must be addressed. What is your position on illegal immigration? And how do you propose to address it if elected?
Okay, you cut out a couple.
Did you get it?
Yeah,
You
can
want
you
me
repeat that?
Do it again? Okay. Building the wall was a pillar of President Trump's campaign. He identified an issue that must be addressed. What is your position on illegal immigration, and how do you propose to address it if elected?
I'm probably going to take some heat on this, and that's okay. Illegal immigration is just that. It's illegal. If you are here and you didn't come here by legal means, you need to go back to wherever you came from. That wall is a wonderful tool. It actually deters people from trying to come across into this country. I got it. America is great. Everybody wants to be here. But there's rules, there's regulations, and there's laws. If you're willing to break them to get here, you're not going to sit there and follow the ones that we have over here once you're there. You don't need to be here if you're here illegally. It's a drain on the economy, it's a drain on the taxpayer, and you have no right to be here. There's millions of other individuals that come over and are waiting in line. You don't get a free pass just because you hop the fence. I love the Trump's border initiative, and now I even love it more that Texas is taking that initiative back up and privately funding it. The wall works, we've seen it work, and it will work again once we put more money into it.
Mr. Gibbons.
As Mike said, if you come here illegally, you got to go back and then apply for legal entry. If you don't have law and order in your immigration policy, you don't have a nation. In the last campaign, I ran in 2018. I ran for 6 months as first-time candidate for this seat. Actually, Sherrod Brown's was going to be Sherrod Brown's seat. I was Donald Trump's co-chair, yet he campaigned against me because he was told to by the party. But I ended up winning 38 counties and 32% of the vote. One of the things I announced during that is I had a solution for funding the wall. And I'm pretty proud of this. But if you've ever traveled abroad, virtually every country you go in charges a fee when you go across. And it's anywhere from $20 to $100 and $150 in some of the smaller countries. We don't do that. It's all free to come in the U.S., and that makes sense. Anyway, I proposed that. We got some interest from the Trump administration. It kind of fell apart as we were going along. But when the Democrats came up with a bill to make sure the wall wasn't built, they actually inserted that is my proposal almost word for word in there that had to be illegal and we couldn't charge a fee. The wall is essential. You can't keep people out. It's a little ridiculous that we have the left saying that this is the most horrible country in the world. We're all hypocrites. It needs to be rebuilt from scratch. But we've got 150 million people around the world who will come here tomorrow. We need to control it, and Biden better get it under control, or he's going to have a bigger landslide than he's going to than he thought he was in 22.
Mr. Pukita, I've got a very comprehensive plan for immigration, and you're not going to have heard it from anybody else. First, we need to finish the wall. Second, we need to figure out who's here, both illegally and with visa overstays, which are also illegal, but they're a different category. Then we need to figure out what to do with those people. I would be okay sending them to the back of the line. I'd also be okay with something that's a little unique, and that is that if you self-report, you go into another line. Because we say we have 11 million illegal aliens, then we hear it's 13 million, and we have no idea. So we got to get our hands around how many people are actually illegal. And I think if they could know that if they self-reported, they get into line sooner, we may be able to accomplish that faster. Then we need to move to a merit-based immigration system. And it needs to be based on the full employment rate. That's somewhere, economists say, between 3.5% and 5.5%. Excuse me, 3.5% and 4.5%. I'll take any of those numbers. Let's say it's 4%. When unemployment is at 4%, we open up the dial and let people in. We do it on a merit basis. We let in the people that we need. The minute unemployment goes up, we shut that tap off. People will tell you that it can't be done. It's too complex, it's too hard, you can't stop the process, it's too laborious. We're Americans, we can do anything. We need to pause immigration until we figure out who's here. So, build a wall, pause immigration, figure out who's here, then use that dial to bring in people on a merit basis.
See, I talked about earlier on immigration. We like to finish the wall. I was talking actually last week, one of them Democrat on one county fair. And he said, yeah, we should let everybody know. I said, can you open your house and anybody can walk in and stay in your home? He said, no, I don't want to stay somebody in my home. I said, this is our home, our country. We don't want somebody walk in and they actually just stay in our country, without any legal entry or anything like that. That's the time Democrats, they don't want to do that at their home. Why we want to actually illegally allow to our nation? Because if you're talking a couple 100 years back or 150 years back, that was a different story, but not anymore. Because every country got exactly like a border and a wall and everything. They don't let anybody in their own country even. Including even China, you cannot walk in just like that either. So why we need to do that? And I talked about immigration before, just on first question before, we have more than 11 million people. If we can plan what is the Mark says, similar way I talked about it, it's over the 7-year plan, and they can start paying the taxes, and we can collect the money over the 7 years, $7,000 per year, $49,000, and plus they start paying the taxes from the day one. We find out who is actually, who is right now just self-reporting to us, and that's what we can give them the residency from our nation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Leipold, I'd like to do a quick 30-second follow-up on this immigration question. Do you feel that it's right or legal for the individual states to take action on border protection themselves if the federal government isn't, including contributing funds to states that are on the border?
I absolutely believe that. I believe in state sovereignty and protecting their individual citizens. Absolutely.
Mr. Gibbons.
I'm not sure if we're going to find it legal in the long run. Legislative, we could make it legal. But if your state's in a state of crisis, you have every right to do whatever it takes if the federal government's not doing it. I would defend it. We're going to have litigation over it. There's no doubt about it. And I'm glad to see that we're sending some help from Ohio.
Mr. Pukita.
I don't really care if it's legal or not from a constitutional standpoint. We need to do it, and we need to force it to go to the Supreme Court. Someone needs to say how they're aggrieved by doing that. I'd like to see how they're going to make a case for that and send it to the Supreme Court. That's what I think we ought to do. We've got to do this more and more and more. Democrats do this all the time. We seem to be afraid to do it. We've got to start pushing the edge of the envelope really hard.
Mr. Patel.
If federal government cannot do that job, then it's actually our state, they should actually take care of that, and I agree with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbons, our next question will come to you. Please describe what the phrase sanctity of life means to you and how you're going to apply that if you're elected as senator.
Well, I think we're heading toward a reconsideration of Roe v. Wade, so I'm thankful for that. It's a very personal thing for me. So my mother was adopted, and I didn't know about it until I was 12 years old. And when I found out about it, because my grandmother had a non-biological grandmother who I loved dearly, I guess she ended up with a bit of dementia. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. She ended up with a bit of dementia. She told me, I went home and talked to my mother and said, Mom, why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, I didn't want you to think something was wrong with me, and I didn't want you to change your feelings about your grandparents. I said, are you kidding? I've been very active, particularly pregnancy crisis centers, things like that. One of the problems, I'm a Roman Catholic, one of the problems was we tell these young ladies to have the child, and then we stigmatize them. And we've got to stop it. And I saw it up close and personal. I would vote for life in any situation I'm in. I'm pro-life without exception. But I think we've got the right Supreme Court now, and that's the most effective way to get it done.
Mr. Pukita.
Abortion is murder, whether it's day one or day or week 42, is it? 41? I always forget how many weeks there are. I should know, my daughter just had my second grandchild. Abortion is murder. It's also not a federal issue. It's a state issue. And that is the best way for us to do away with abortion. You're never going to get a law that will pass constitutional muster at the federal level to outlaw abortion. The best thing we can do is see Roe versus Wade overturned. Now, I have a strategy, and that is to introduce a law that makes a heartbeat bill at the federal level. Now, it will be found unconstitutional, but it will have to go to the Supreme Court, and this will open up Roe versus Wade. If we get them both thrown out, and it comes back to the states, it's easier to work on this on a state-by-state basis rather than a federal basis. It also can be constitutional at the state level, and that means it's unpenetrable. The other thing we need to do is we need to cut off all funding for abortions at the federal level. That includes Planned Parenthood, but more importantly, it should include Medicaid, not paying for those procedures, and it should require private insurers to build two pools of risk. If I am pro-life, I should not have to pay for someone, for a premium for someone having an abortion. That's a religious freedom problem. That's a constitutional problem.
30 seconds.
This will require insurers to basically build two systems. It will drive them crazy and it will cost them money. We also need fetal and embryonic remains to be treated just like our remains. Cremation or proper burial, more money. What I'm trying to do is come at this from a different angle in terms of boxing these people in. We need to make contraceptives, especially oral contraceptives for women, available over the counter like just about every other country has done. We got to take this from every angle, people.
I think what Mark said, actually, that's actually, if you the day one, if you're killing the baby, that's called murder. And I'm a pro-life as well as pro-gun. And we don't want to see that actually, abortion, giving the money from our state or federal government to the support for that. Well, I wouldn't agree with that. We cannot afford to give that because we don't want to kill the baby. That's where I'm exactly on pro-life.
Thank you, Mr. Leipold.
I'm a firm believer in life begins at conception. In 1973, there was a young lady in Altoona, Pennsylvania, by the name of Amelia Schratzmeyer. She became pregnant, out of wedlock, and she was a prostitute. And her friends and family encouraged her to have an abortion. She didn't have an abortion, she had the child. And the state actually took the child. The child was in foster care for about 5 years. And the child was in a system that was broken. The foster system in Pennsylvania was very, very bad at the time. The child suffered physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. But I will tell you right now, I am very, very glad that my mother chose life. And it's a very, very sensitive spot for me. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
All right. Back to, I think, starting with Mr. Pukita, right? I got the rotation right?
Yep.
Okay. We touched on critical race theory a little while ago, that much has been made of CRT at West Point, as well as throughout the rest of the military. What is your position on the current administration's implementation of CRT in the military, and what do you think will be the end result of such training?
I think it's idiotic. I think that we need a fighting force that needs to be incredibly lethal, incredibly well funded, and incredibly technology driven, and God forbid that we ever have to use it. If we have strength and we project that strength around the world, we won't be attacked, but more importantly, the bad actors won't act out. We need to rebuild that kind of superiority, and it's not going to happen when we're worried about critical race theory. That needs to just be stopped. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation. Think about this. War fighters are supposed to fight wars. That's what they're for. I will tell you that I understand that the generals above first star are primarily appointed by the Obama administration. I think when a Republican gets reelected, they need to come in and wipe out everyone that's at that level. They aren't war fighters, they're politicians. General Miley, you really want that guy protecting our country? He's head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he thinks this critical race theory study is great. He doesn't even understand where it comes from. It comes from critical theory. Critical race theory is just one piece. It's a Marxist construct put together to drive us apart and blame other people for our ills. So we fight with each other so they can take over. It's got to be stopped.
Yeah.
Critical theory you're talking about, that's actually, I can say, nonsense. Whatever they talk, all those things in school and everything, they should not even begin with it. And I know we just talk about right now critical race theory everywhere we go, but I think we should start that from the right now, going from everywhere in our nation. We don't need to even so that and funding, giving the funding from federal government or state government. think that we should stop all that thing. But I just, as per my knowledge and my belief, I think critical race theory is absolute nonsense. Thank you.
Mr. Leipold.
The critical race theory in general is a cancer to society. In the military, it is even worse than a cancer. I have a lot of friends that are still in the military, don't spend 22 years there and not make a couple of acquaintances. Most of them think it's a joke, but at the same time, they have expressed concern because the individuals that are willing to do what needs to be done are feigning they're getting out. They're leaving the military in droves because of this new agenda. What does that leave you? It leaves you with people that bought into it. So the Marxist agenda of division is being set. It started at the education level, and now it's working its way into the military circles. It needs to stop. And again, it's a theory, but they're presenting it like it's something that everybody has to believe. I would love it if they would allow my kids and friends who go to public school to pray in school. But it is not allowed. This is a cultist movement. It's a Marxist cultist movement. And it's in the military now, and it's detrimental to the good standing of it.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbons.
I mentioned I studied economics. I also studied political philosophy. I was a double major. Back when I was in school, there was a school of philosophy called postmodernism. Everybody thought it was a joke. Basically, it was an attack on the Enlightenment. Western civilization was this horrible contrivance. They rejected reason, facts, science, and empirical evidence. Well, back in the 50s and 60s, socialism wasn't working too good. It was failing wherever it was. And we had all these Marxists and socialists that said, you know what? It doesn't work very well. What are we going to do? We're Marxists and socialists, and hundreds of millions of people are dying. How are we going to handle this? What we need to do is reject empirical evidence. Act like it didn't happen. If you reject facts, reason, and science, that's exactly what critical race theory is. They're using postmodernism with this rejection of Western civilization. They've taken the landed elite in Marxism and they've turned that into white people as oppressors. And it's a way to bail out the Marxists and socialists that didn't have anywhere to go. And we have got to defeat it. And a lot of people think when you say, I don't want critical race theory in my schools, that you're against teaching about slavery. It has nothing to do with it. Nothing. And don't let anybody tell you that. It's a philosophy. I think it's closely akin to a religion. It's called the theory in the inside circles, and I think that's the way to attack it. On a First Amendment basis, you can't be teaching a religion in our schools. And we'll see how this develops.
Gentlemen, this last set of questions, we've tried to tailor the question to each of you individually. I've got it in alphabetical order, so Mr. Gibbons, I'm going to reverse here and start with you. We'll just go your left, our right, proceed from there. Mr. Gibbons, from a paper route to a private investment company, you have both blue-collar and white-collar work experience. But the population of Cleveland is around 385,000 and urban. Paulding County in population is under 20,000 and rural. Why are you the man to represent both the Cleveland businessman and the Paulding farm family?
Interesting you ask that question. My grandfather was Big Jack Gibbons. He was president of Local 310 in Cleveland. That's a labor issue. My grandfather had 27 extra links on his Rich watch. That's how big he was. I got his little baby hands. I don't know that. But my grandfather, when he retired, moved up to Flint, Michigan, and bought a farm. And we didn't have a lot of dough in my family. In fact, until I got to high school, I didn't know that everybody didn't push their mother's car to start. But anyway, my vacation every year was cleaning his hog pens and his sheep pens. My grandfather was a genius. Why would a 6-year-old little boy want to clean pig feces all day long? And I'll tell you why. Because he let me drive the manure spreader, the tractor pulling the manure spreader. And I would have worked 20 hours a day to drive that tractor even once. So I did that every summer until I was well into high school. And I used to go and, I came from a city, but my summers were on a farm, and I loved it. I loved my grandfather. I loved what he did. I loved to go to the elevator and get the hog feed ground and ride around with my grandfather and, wear farm clothes. And I just thought it was the greatest thing. Frankly, my wife and I are looking to buy a small farm right now because I like what my grandfather did in his older years, and I'd like to do the same thing. So, do I understand what goes on in the farming community? No, I'm not an expert. I know a lot more about investment banking, but I certainly appreciate it. And I think everybody's pretty much the same. I really do. Black, white, whatever. They care about their family. They care about their kids. They want their kids to prosper. They want to leave something to them when they die. We're all the same. I don't care if we live in a city or we live in the country. And I know that being the same, that I want to achieve the same things for my family, and that's why I'm going to doing this. This is not my idea of fun for the next 6 years. This is something I owe this country because of what they've given me. And so I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Mr. Leipold, attack helicopter pilot, first responder, father of 8. That's a pretty adventurous life. And while I'm tempted to ask you which is more challenging, flying an Apache helicopter or being the father of 8 children, I'll instead ask, why senator, and why are you the best man to complete that mission?
Why senator? Well, I can't honestly answer whether or not being a senator or being any elected official is any better than anything else. But right now, there's an opening. There's a demand and there's a need. And I believe that I am the man that Ohio needs for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I'm not a politician. What you see is what you get. I came from humble beginnings, and I'm going to go out in humble endings. I don't need a lot of money. I got just enough to get by, and I'm quite happy with that. I got lots of kids over there that already know they're going to have to take care of me when I get older. Like you said, I got 8 altogether, so I'm playing the odds. I don't need a lot of money. But seriously, as a senator from Ohio, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed that aren't being addressed. I'm energetic, I'm empathetic to the needs of my fellow citizens, and I believe that I have the ability to drive the leadership based on integrity and honor that this state needs in Washington, D.C. And I hope that answers.
Thank you. Mr. Patel, your biography reads like a recruiting poster for the American dream. You immigrated here in 1979, became a United States citizen in 1994, and became a successful entrepreneur, and now you're seeking election to the Senate. That's quite a journey you've been on. Tell us, why are you the best man to be entrusted with protecting our American dream?
That is my American dream, Matt. I came here with like a small dollar, $20 in my pocket, and worked with a business. And I got married in 1990. 31 years I've been married with my wife. Childhood, we've been living in Westerville area, and we have 4 children. My oldest daughter, she's a doctor, naturopathy doctor, and we have a twin daughter. Twin daughter, one of them, now she's a lawyer, and one got political science students, but then she got married and moved to India. Was born and raised, everyone is a vegetable. And now she lives in India. And I actually lived with the grandpa just about April 26th, first time I got my daughter with the baby girl, in 26 April. That's this year. Okay. And I got youngest boy, he's working on the real estate, like selling houses and all that. But we got actually, I don't have to do all this to run for the Senate or anything right now, but this is my time because American dream I live. If you look at here, I've been visited more than 20 countries of the worldwide. And we are the best country on planet Earth. Even, if you ask me right now, when I go even from here to anywhere outside the United States, TSA, check my bag or anything like that, and they see the flag of our nation and ask me, what is the flag doing here? I say, I do Pledge of Allegiance, no matter what, every morning, because I love so much our country, and for our country, I can do whatever I have to do, anything to do for our country. And that's exactly the reason actually I'm running for the Senate, because this is my time to give back to our nation. As a businessman, I am not a politician. I'm not establishment either. People maybe know me, and few of them in Central Ohio possibly. I was actually last 15 years chairman and president of the Indian community of Ohio. And we have done the business with, as an ambassador to India to United States, and an ambassador from United States to India. Now, they built the Statue of Unity in India. If you know about the Statue of Unity, and that contract got from the Turner Construction Company from Ohio. They got close to $1 billion contract. That statue is about 2.5 times bigger than the Statue of Liberty. They built right now in India, and they got the business. And right now, if you're looking here, even Indian businesses employed here in our country, more than 200,000 people. And that is, I do as a volunteer, been doing the same thing, and I want to do stronger, more relations with both countries, and that is my dream, an American dream. We want to make sure work with everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Pukita, you built a business out of your basement. You then gave that up to run for Senate. You were the first candidate to enter this race, even going so far as preparing to challenge Senator Portman in a primary. Now, first in time is not always first and right, so why are you not only the first, but the best candidate for the Ohio Senate?
I recently listened to a really strong pastor who had a big flock in Pittsburgh. And he talked about anger, and he said, as Christians, righteous anger is good. Being angry about sinful behavior or corruption or things like that is good. Rage is not good. He used an example of people in his flock who wished ill will to come to President Biden. And I'll let you fill in the blank on what ill will meant, whether it was illness or death or whatever. I'm righteously angry. We've got corruption in Washington. I just got tired of yelling at the TV every night, posting borderline inappropriate stuff on social media, and feeling like, sometimes it was over the line, feeling like I was helpless. And I'm like, why doesn't someone run? Why doesn't someone run? And I thought, I can do this. I think I'm the best qualified because I'd get out of the race if someone better stood up to run. But I think I'm the best person in this race. And I'm telling you right now, the 4 people sitting on this dais right now are a heck of a lot better than the folks that didn't show up because they didn't care about you. And they didn't want to be asked questions and have to be on the record. They want to control their message. I give these guys a lot of credit, and I got to tell you, I'm going to pat myself on the back for being willing to take the questions and be put on the spot. So I was angry. I think I'm a smart guy. Here's what we need in Washington. I think we need a group of people like me who are angry, who are smart, who are articulate and understand the issues, and who don't care what other people think about them. We need savages to go to Washington. We need fighters to go to Washington. What did President Trump tell us? We've got to fight like hell. He's correct. We are in a fight against good, evil against good, and I could not die peacefully without fighting with every cell I've got.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program. Could we please give these men a round of applause for their time for tonight?